رشا عبد الحكيم، أخصائية التنمية الدولية ذات الخبرة الواسعة، وهي المستشار الاقتصادي الأول في الوكالة الأمريكية للتنمية الدولية في مصر USAID.
We have actually a very distinguished panel with vast experience in different sectors: renewable energy, digitalization, green economy, as well as SMEs, the importance of SMEs as a sector. So we'll have 2 rounds of questions. And then at the end, I'm going to ask the panelists to give one recommendation for the implementation of blended finance in Egypt. So we'll start with Mr. Emad Hassan. And just to give you a brief about him, he's a clean energy professional with over 35 years of global experience in developing energy efficiency and renewable energy markets in 10 countries around the world. He held various positions in the energy field in the US over a span of 13 years prior to serving as an international consultant, where he provided professional support with a focus on energy efficiency, market development, including USAID, UNDP, EBRD, and the World Bank. In Egypt, he also served as an energy advisor to Egypt's Energy Council, a green tourism advisor to the Minister of Tourism from 2014 to 2019, and now he is currently a consulting team to implement the EBRD's Green Economy Financing Facility in Egypt, which is a green financing facility introduced to support Egypt's transition towards the greener economy. Very happy to have you with us in this panel and to gain from your experience. So my question to you, Mr. Ahmed, is that there has been a very recent World Bank report on financing the energy transition. And according to this report, low-income countries and middle-income countries receive only 20% of global investments in clean energy. And this is due to 2 main reasons. The first is limited access to private capital, and the second is the high cost of capital. So in light of this information, can you please tell us about the prospects of blended finance in the renewable energy sector in Egypt, whether it's applicable, yes or no, and what are the prospects of implementation? Thank you.
مساء الخير جميعا. أنا شاكر على التقديم الطيب ده. أنا هجاوب على حضرتك على السؤال yes or no. Definitely yes. يعني هو should I switch in English? Well, I'll switch in English. Your question was very specific. Is blended finance needed or applicable to Egypt? The answer is yes. Yes, of course, not just yes. The question is how. The question is how do you offer finance in Egypt? I am totally against the idea of a one-size-fits-all, of developing a financing model overseas somewhere and then come and plant it. It never over the past 20, 30 years proved any success. You need to really have it homegrown and then customize it according to both the local and the international needs. With regards to the specific sector that you mentioned about renewable energy, I think one of the excuse me, one of the statistics you highlighted is that the developing countries only receive 20%. I'll give you an example of what we do that proves otherwise. Right now, I'm a consultant. I lead a consulting team hired by EBRD, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, to provide on-lending services, on-lending to green projects for green transition through local banks, okay? So the idea in concept is a platform to blend finance coming from different donors and development partners, and then on-lend it to the end user through local banks. Yani local banks know how to make it, how to source it to the market. It's not the job of the development partners to get down to the level of the borrowers. Good? We have a total of approximately between $600 and $700 million available for finance. One facility started about 5 years ago with 140 million euros or $175 million at the time. Only 114 million have been booked into loans today after 5 years. What's the takeaway? That no, there is more money that you can spend. So I don't subscribe to the concept of there's not enough money offered to the developing countries. There is money available, there is capital investment available through the local banks, so it's not really a gimmick. So to answer your question is, no, there is enough money. So where is the challenge? Why isn't this money moving much faster? This is what I think we're supposed to be here to try to understand what to do next, not what happened in the past. We have a problem in the local financial institutions' understanding of what green economy is. And therefore, to move the money or source the money into the market, it becomes a challenge because their local staff doesn't understand it. They don't know how to sell it. The relationship managers are accustomed to booking loans at a certain interest rate, regardless of what the most important thing is the credit worthiness of the borrower. So they don't understand. They don't understand sustainability. They don't understand green. They don't understand sustainable finance or resource efficiency or circular economy. All of these things are foreign to the banking industry. So they don't have the right capacity. And there's no way you're going to plant this capacity in a year or two. So there is a lead time needed to build the infrastructure for that system, not the borrower. The borrower can be easily trained through the sector-specific mandates. Now we move into the sector. What are the sectors? You highlighted renewable energy. To me, this is, I apologize, but this is not a sector. This is a practice. This is a technology being used in different applications to replace fossil fuel and traditional forms of energy into renewable resources. It's not a sector. But it has players, it has people that benefit from it, the suppliers, the offerer of services, and there are the clients that replace their energy for whatever reason. So the sector, in my definition, is whether there is like a food and beverage sector, the construction industry sector, the packaging sector, the IT sector, transport sector, and on and on. What we found is there are certain sectors that are more fit for this green transition than others. Those sectors that are either exporting to the international market and therefore they face some kind of a pressure to try to do the green transition, whether in running away from fossil fuel or in increasing job opportunities or in doing resource efficiency or using some materials into new production and on and on. So what are these sectors? I'm not going to mention them one by one, but I'll give you some examples. The food and beverage industry, even during the pandemic, was very much into greening, okay, for obvious reasons, because there was a lot of demand on them. The IT industry, because of the resorting to online and hybrid systems of communication and meetings and so on and so forth. There is the transport. There's been a lot of transport needs, storing food. Construction seems to be next, but it's not really a big beneficiary of green finance or blended finance yet. So I really don't want to take time from the rest of the panel, but I just want to drive to your question. What is applicable in Egypt? My perspective is there are three things that I wrote them down. Customization of the offering. You really have to customize the financing product. Number two is the capacity of the local FI system, the financial institution system, because in my perspective, they're still in elementary school when it comes to building their own capacity to perform. Number three is market access. I very briefly, and I apologize to my colleagues here, very briefly, market access, by that I mean who are you trying to access in the market? A lot of people now talking about SMEs, small and medium enterprises, because that is supposedly the backbone of any emerging economy. SMEs has a major problem called the definition. Who defines what an SME is? If you ask the European Union, it's a 50 million euro in revenue, but not to exceed 250 employees. I'll let you be the judge. The World Bank, the $10 million export, so it's a different definition. Therefore, the the market itself, the SMEs themselves, don't know how to classify themselves. And I think that's a major issue before we offer any blended finance. Customization, I want to very briefly touch on an example in the Ministry of Tourism that we tried to develop a customized financing model for the sector. Tried it 5 or 6 years ago. We managed to get as high as the Supreme Council of Energy approval and a prime ministerial decree to do it, but it failed. That model was based on like a revenue-based. So the hotel owner would borrow money to do a green project, to do a renewable energy project or a desalination and repay the loan through a certain fee tied to the revenue. And at that time, we suggested it would be a $1 per room night occupied. So if the hotel is 80% occupied, they will be making $1 for each room every month. Okay, so you get $12 a year per room. If it doesn't, if some kind of a terrorist act happened somewhere in Sinai and the hotel went down to 15% occupancy, then their payment to the loan would go down accordingly. Basically moving the risk away from the hotel owners for things they have not even been part of. We did not manage to make that work despite the decision maker agreement to it and allocation of 20 million pounds. But we were not able to do it. So I want to stop here and say when it comes to customization, I think we need to learn what each sector needs and what we can do and how does that tie to their international access or exposure. I don't want to take much time, but there will be an opportunity to do the session.
Thank you very much for these insightful information, and we'll come back to you on the problems and how to, and the challenges, how to address them. And since you mentioned the SMEs, and this is the natural, our next speaker will be focusing on SMEs. Ms. Hanaa El Hilaly. She has a very extensive and impressive experience in the area of microfinance, SME finance and development. She's currently the Executive Director of Alkheir Microfinance, Non-Executive Chairman of Aspire Capital Holding Company. She's a member of the Advisory Board for the Global Council for Women in the Banking Sector, FinTech and Financial Services, member of the Board of Trustees of Egyptian SMEs Association and Nida Foundation, Arab Foundation for Young Scientists. She is the former acting managing director and director general of international cooperation and planning of the Social Fund for Development for over 13 years. And she has over 25 years experience in international, regional, and local banks in the areas of marketing, trade finance, and wealth management. And she was selected as one of the top, she was voted as one of the top 50 business women in Egypt. So she is the one to talk about SMEs. Hanaa, since everyone considers SMEs as the backbone for the economy, can you please shed light on the obstacles that SMEs encounter and your insights on how to overcome the major challenges that these SMEs encounter? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rasha, and thank you, ENCC, SAFE, Dr. Hussam, Mona, the whole group, the whole team. This is a very important and interesting and strategic topic, and I thank you for the choice. And I thank Creative for holding this together in partnership with ENCC. And we'd love to see more events with this weight and this strength. Actually, the SMEs, since I have the full passion for small and micro enterprises, in view of also my banking experience, which fits in perfectly with the concept of lending, be it small, medium, or micro, I strongly believe that SMEs play a pivotal role, not only in economic development, but also in social development. The social angle of microfinance explains this. So small and medium cater to economic development, and micro caters to economic and social development as well. Being job creators, we have in Egypt over 700 to 800,000 graduates on a yearly basis, so neither the government nor the private sector can cater to this large number of university graduates. Needless to mention also the technical schools and so on and so forth. Thinking of the obstacles that SMEs encounter, I can elaborate on this in different pillars. First, it's the access to finance, and since we're speaking now about blended financing, I'd like to call it for SMEs rather blended financing and blended non-financial services. When I say blended financial, it's the access to finance aspect. When I say blended non-financial, it is the obstacles facing the SME beneficiary when it comes to different pillars. First, it's the access to training, to capacity building. And when I say capacity building, I mean by that business incubators, business accelerators, and so on and so forth, because those SMEs applicants neither have the experience, the know-how, or the knowledge of how to start their business. And I have to commend ILO for their excellent programs in this regards. It's the Start Your Business program and Know Your Business program, where they train SMEs, beneficiaries, and organizations how to make a feasibility study, how to make a business plan, a marketing strategy, HR training, financial training, and so on and so forth. So it's a comprehensive approach on the non-financial services aspects. The second pillar is the access to licensing. And in Egypt, we used to experience too many obstacles when it comes to licensing. But thanks to the one-stop shop that has been established, and now I'm going to wear my previous hat of the social fund, now called Miss MEDA, in establishing the one-stop shops to facilitate and streamline the licensing process. And this is actually mandated by law as well. The fourth pillar is the access to marketing, because if you produce a product and you're unable to sell this product, then you're in default. The access to finance, I'll get back to that, is no problem, because I think most, and I dealt with international donors before, like the World Bank, the European Union, the AFD, you name it, the Arab Investment, the European Investment Bank, the Arab funds, and so on and so forth. And they all have appetite for financing SMEs, strongly believing that is a main vehicle and a catalyst for economic development in creating jobs and benefiting the community at large. Access to marketing, how can we achieve that? It's, since you're asking about the remedies or how to do it, it's through, I think, the main advantage is through e-marketing, and that's the name of the game. We all experienced, for example, during COVID, everybody actually was online, purchasing online. So the e-marketing aspect is very important when it comes to SMEs, and Ms. MEDA has has an excellent initiative in partnering with Amazon, with Jumia, and so on and so forth, to help the SMEs beneficiaries market their products. Another venue would be the international and the local exhibitions that are held to help SMEs beneficiaries market their products. Now, on the micro side, it is different, because micro caters to women and female-headed households and poor people in governorates, in villages and in governorates. Access to finance for micro has proven to be very successful, and the percentage of default is less than 1%. Actually, I pride myself that the company I'm managing achieved a 99.5% percentage of repayment, which is, but this of course needs diligent controls, follow-ups, field visits, and so on and so forth. So microfinance caters to the poor and the ultra-poor, and this explains the social dimension of microfinance. Dr. Ahmed, you mentioned the utilization of the funds. When it comes to SMEs, maybe you can benefit from this. The Central Bank of Egypt has mandated banks to use 25% of their loan portfolios for SMEs, and there's continuous monitoring of the implementation when it comes to banks. So maybe your FIs can have a mandate for the utilization aspect. I think SMEs could be further enhanced through blended financing, financial and non-financial, to cater to all aspects and provide for an integrated and comprehensive approach in development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hanaa, very much. Now we go to Mr. Ahmed Gabr. His bio is very inspiring, actually. When I read it, I was really inspired by your efforts and your relentless efforts, actually, and perseverance in achieving what you want. Mr. Ahmed Gabr is an ex-Egyptian Army officer. He earned a scholarship to attend the U.S. Army Combat Diver course. He is now the only certified U.S. combat diver in the Middle East. He had this passion of breaking the Guinness record for diving. So he had to organize and research and prepare and find funding for his support team and correspond actually with the Guinness World Records representatives. It took him 4 years to finalize the preparations and achieve the maximum training for improving his abilities, both physical and mental abilities, and also selecting the spot where he's going to dive. And the proposed date for this was September 18th, 2014. The actual duration of the dive was 13 hours, 50 minutes. He came up in 13 hours, 36 minutes. So before actually he beat the record. And the last 27 meters alone took him 7 hours to reach the surface. But he did it. So he represents a very impressive actually story of perseverance, of identifying your passion, identifying your objective, working very hard for years to achieve it. So his dedication and hard work actually paid off. So I found your story very inspiring. Mr. Ahmed, I know that you have some activities related to the preservation of coral reefs, and some activities related to the transformation to the green economy. So if you can just tell us about, briefly about them, and I know you have a video that you want to show us, so please just give us a snapshot of what you're doing, and then we're going to watch the video. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, like, it seems like from the introduction I had right now, I know how to dive, but I'm not able to talk, actually. So, excuse me. I mean, like, for anything or for like lacking information, but I will be ready to answer questions after. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Saif, or ENCC for having me here among these amazing speakers around. So it's very impressive, actually, to hear all of that, so I cannot speak economically. Everything started with me, 1 year after my deepest scuba dive record, I was able to collect 614 divers, and I was able to achieve another Guinness World Record, which is the largest underwater cleanup. The largest underwater cleanup in a single venue. I was able to collect 614 divers, and that was the largest. And I kept this record for 4 years, and it's been broken after in Florida, in Deerfield, in Florida. The whole idea of this record is to do a coral reef restoration, because I can see that everything is degrading. During my training in 4 years for my deepest scuba dive, everything is going down. It's not actually doing well. And the only source of information in the world in corals was the Great Barrier Reef. Same species, but the resilient are totally different. So that's why I wanted to do a research in the Red Sea corals. I was speaker in Singapore, and I met this guy. The founder of Ocean Quest Global. He's my knowledge partner till that day. And he helped me to establish, coral nurseries here in the Red Sea, using a complete organic methodology to be the first project in Africa and in a subtropical region. So how do we do that? So there is a short video that we're gonna show it in a little bit, so after I just explain what else I'm doing, which is not in the video. So this is one part. The other part, organic methodology, means that we don't bring anything from outside the water. This is the first part. The second part is to increase awareness, especially with the younger generation, because you can harm the coral reef even that you're not touching the coral reef. You know, every coral reef, they have the microorganism and the small fish. You know, these small fish, they give service to the coral reef, you know. So even that you are swimming and you are not touching the coral reef, you know, it can degrade and it can die as well, you know, because they give service, you know. So if one diver is passing by, for example, you know, so this microorganism and the small fish, they disappear for a minute. 2 divers, 2 minutes. 3 minutes. 1,000 diver, 1,000 minutes. You know, this coral reef, this organism or these fish, they don't do the job properly. So they die actually, even that you're not touching the coral. So we want to increase awareness among divers. Plus, we need to increase awareness, especially with the younger generation. With the younger generation, it's a little bit different because we don't want them to tell them what to do and what not to do, you know, because we want to create an emotional tie with nature. We want them to love nature, you know. No one will harm something he likes, or no one will hurt something he loves, you know, and this is what we want to increase, you know. So we arrange cleanups to collect single-use plastic, especially single-use plastic, as it has direct impact on one of the main stressors for coral reef. It kills coral reef. So we collect this rubbish and we recycle this product, this single-use plastic, to be a product, you know. So using women from the Red Sea. So we empower women in the Red Sea, plus we create job opportunities for them. Simply, we have free education. We offer free education to any person, you know, especially divers and non-divers. So it doesn't matter because we have many teams. Like we have a short team, we have dive team, and we have a research team. The second part is we offer, after free education, it's mainly based on volunteers, you know, so we have human resources, we create job opportunities, especially for the local community. And the third part is CSR, as we are sponsored so far now by the National Bank of Egypt. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention the name or not. I think, I don't want to be too boring talking, you know, I mean, like after this amazing speaker, after what happened right now, but I have a short video, I hope it can explain, you know, like everything. Thank you very much.
And I did another intense work on the title of most participants in the water. I'm also the founder of GabrTek company, which is now doing the coral restoration project and reef rehabilitation of the places that most affected by nature. I moved to Hurghada, like after I retired from the army, so I retired in 2015. So 2017, I decided to be with my family, and then I just came here to Hurghada. I bought my own boat, you know, so I used this boat, you know, to follow up with my coral nurseries as well. When I started like my sustainability projects, you know, so it's always, I see the reef is degrading, it's not the same as before, you know, so that was like a big question, can I actually do something for the coral reef? To me, right now, what I'm doing is planting corals, you know, or I do coral propagation. Planting corals, when I heard about it the first time, it was like kind of a dream. I never expected that happened, because as far as I knew, you know, like 1 centimeter of corals, it takes years and years and years to grow. But I met Ahmed Abdel Wahab, you know, so he's the founder of Ocean Plus Global, and he guided me to, he actually does these kind of projects in Asia. So I asked him, can I actually do it here? He said, of course you can do it here. He came here, he trained me, and I started the coral propagation project, and to be the first project happens in Africa and in subtropical region. I signed a protocol with my strategic partner, the National Bank of Egypt. Also, I signed the same protocol with the Ministry of Environment and the Academy of Science and Technology and Research. And I started the project. The project is based on 2 phases. The first phase is to do the coral coral nursery using organic methodology. So we bring substrates from dead corals and from argonite rocks. And then our fragments that we glue on the substrates, mainly we bring it from corals. They are about to die or broken coral that we already rescued, and then we put it in the nursery. Second part is to do the reef rehabilitation. Reef rehabilitation, we cannot just go for any reef that we decide just we are going to interfere with nature. We cannot do that. So we have to monitor first the reef for 1 year, 4 seasons, and then we decide does it actually need rehabilitation or just a normal for its dead because it's a normal life cycle. If it's a normal life cycle, we just leave it. We don't interfere with nature, and we leave nature to express itself. If it needs our interference, so first we need to recognize why there's a problem with the specific coral reef, and then if it needs our interference, yes, we do rehabilitation to this reef from the genes that are established in the nursery, and then we just go and place it. We mainly have 3 teams, so we have the short team, and they are responsible mainly for logistics and propagation and the planting the corals, and we have the dive team. They are responsible of doing the nursery, or establishing the nurseries, framing them, and to bring the substrates to the surface to the short team so they can do the job. And we have the research team. These are the 3 teams interfering with that. Project mainly like affect any, why do I do that? Why do I do corals? Corals has a big impact on nature. Most of the oxygen on planet Earth mainly coming from the sea, coming from corals. So simply, if there are no coral, no oxygen, of course, climate change. This is why simply corals. As well, we have corals. They extract a lot of medicine from coral, like some medicine for cancer and heart disease as well. Corals directly and indirectly affect countries mainly based on shore tourism. So no corals, that means no tourism, mean no economy. Egypt is one of these countries. I think we need to pay more attention to corals, and also to encourage new tourism, like scientific tourism as well, along with tourism, with the Roman tourism, and to help to avoid the climate change. This is the second thing. The last thing is the awareness campaign I'm trying to deploy. So I'm trying with the awareness campaign to engage all the time with all types of society people, like different things as well. So first we need to remove the stressors. So to remove the stressors, so we do a lot of cleanups, engaging like younger children, older generations even, and then we take this kind of waste and then we try to reform them. So we make some progress from this waste as well. So just remember all the time that we live in our children's past, so it's good to leave a good history for them.
Thank you very much. Very nice video. Thank you very much, Mr. Now we come to Dr. Ashraf Abdel Wahab. Dr. Ashraf Abdel Wahab is a professor of computer engineering at the Electronics Research Institute in Egypt. He received his PhD in 1992 in machine learning and evolutionary algorithms. I didn't know actually that machine learning was that old in 1990. I thought it was a new subject. He has published over 60 research papers in national and international journals. He is a member of the Egyptian e-government initiative since its launch in 2001. And in August 2006, he was appointed as the deputy to the minister responsible for supervising, monitoring, and coordinating e-government. In March 2011 till August 2012, he was appointed as acting minister in MSAID. He received the UN Public Service Award for Government Procurement Portal in July 2011. He joined Microsoft in December 2012 as the Corporate Affairs Manager in Egypt and North Africa, and then moved in 2014 to Dubai as the Corporate Affairs Director for Egypt and the Gulf. Dr. Abdel Wahab is a member of several committees, 2 of which are the Advisory Committee to the Supreme Council for Digital Transformation and the Supreme Committee for Administrative Reform headed by the Prime Minister. And starting January 2019, Dr. Abdel Wahab is the Digital Transformation Director, Public Sector Egypt for SAP. Now, based on your long experience in this area, and taking into account the current efforts to have in Egypt e-government and expand e-services, do you think that blended finance is a model that is actually important for Egypt, especially in the digitalization efforts of the government?
Thank you very much for the long introduction. Okay, so of course, based on the experience, my old experience, and of course the speech of my colleagues here on the panel, blended finance is indeed one of the channels that we might think of and consider effectively to support our SMEs, startups, and other institutions, or pave the way to have other institutions to use it to assure more sustainability and our socioeconomic goals, achieve our socioeconomic goals. The issue of the IT sector is different a bit. IT, of course, by itself, it's startups, it's SMEs, and of course the infrastructure that will benefit of such a channel of funding, if you can say so. But on the other side, the IT sector itself is the technology platform for any real development in the economy, implanted by SME, implanted by a startup. So technology is the way, as Jim mentioned in his presentation, education and technology. Technology is the way to do development right now. So moving into this type of technology and using ICT, we have a very challenging problem, which is specifically data, how we use data. Now, most of the business models that are existing in the markets are based on the usage of data, historical data, consumer behavior, how we can manage the consumer experience, manage consumer expectations, and provide a better experience to the consumer, citizen, or whoever is, or investor. So access to data is something that is crucial, and it is not well regulated till now in Egypt. We have one legislation that's in place, which is the personal data protection law, but it's not in effect because the bylaws are not final yet. So practically, we don't have a law for that. So access to data, and this is another problem for the fintech, for example. So fintechs, when they work with banks because they are not a competitor to banks, but they are kind of an extension of the services that banks can deliver to their customers. This is one big issue. How can we exchange data? The laws does not allow for that. And how this creates this partnership between these fintechs and the banks themselves. So data is one big challenge that the current ICT applications or models are facing when implemented here in Egypt. This is one important thing, and it needs a clear regulation and policies about how these companies can have access to data and can use this data in a responsible way. On top of that, of course, we have also the AI paradigm that starts to evolve now, and we see it in different applications. And it is used, but how AI is defined, what are the ethics related to AI to make sure that we are not misusing data, and so on. So there are a list of things that need to be put in place to make sure that this type of applications that we are going to have sooner or later in the market are working properly and provide the right value to the customer that we have. Access to finance, of course, it is an issue for many startups in the ICT sectors and SMEs, simply because the product itself is not well tangible, and sometimes it is not clear for the banks how this will fly and so on. So if you can have blended finance, can be a way to de-risk the ICT products that the SMEs might have, or the ICT SMEs or startups might have in place. I think that's what I'm not take much more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashraf. So we have a second round of questions. So going back to Mr. Emad, I just have a question. When you mentioned that there were a lot of funding, but it was not used, was this mainly because of the cost of the funding? Was it the blended finance, or it was only bank finance? So it was the cost of the lending was high for the private sector to get in.
I don't think there was one reason. I don't think it's the cost of money was the hurdle, because the bank, the local bank, borrows the money from either, whether it's EBRD or one of its development partners, in hard currency. Then they extend it to the market in any format, dollar, euro, Egyptian pound, whatever. I think you have a combination of few things. One is the inability of the banks to market a green product, a green financing product. That's a key element, because they're looking for somebody who's going to pay the debt back. So there is no risk recognition of the risk element. So they basically wipe out any project that doesn't look like it's going to have any chance of repayment. The second element is, of course, in the last 2 years since the pandemic and currently with the foreign exchange issue, a lot of people are shying away from making any investment without understanding whether they be able to pay it back or not. As far as the cost of money, without really getting into the details of the deal, because each deal where EBRD sponsors the whole platform, okay? When we call it GEFF, Green Economy Financing Facility, it's a facility being implemented in 28 countries around the world. In the Middle East, only in Egypt and in Jordan, and it used to be in Lebanon, and it stopped for obvious reasons. The idea is for EBRD to facilitate getting money from different sources. For example, the European Investment Bank, the EU, the AFD. Anybody who wants to put money under that business model, if you will, or financing model can do that. They blend it also with an incentive component, okay, which the EU is solely the payment of it. That incentive component ranges from 10 to 15% waiver of the loan payment. So you borrow $1 million, you pay back $850 to $900. That's a big issue, but it's coming from the EU. So then they have their own set of criteria. EBRD has its own set of criteria. EIB has one, AFD has one. So you get really stuck into trying to match the requirements of multiple players with market needs. Some sectors respond faster than others, but that is the major hurdle in my perspective. And don't misunderstand me when I said that we cannot put the money into projects. It was moving fast until the pandemic. But another hurdle that we saw was in creating facilities limited to SMEs. So the big guys cannot step in. So when you get into SMEs, it's wonderful because it's 50 million euros in revenue. In today's currency exchange, we're talking about 1.7 billion pounds. That is not an SME by any definition. But then there's a requirement attached to it from the EU that it cannot exceed 250 employees. I don't know how you can really have revenues of 1.7 billion pounds a year with 250 employees, especially in Egypt. We all know what the level of salaries and compensations are, so it makes it easy for business owners to hire more capital. And on top of that, also your interest as a country to try to defeat unemployment. So To me, that was a major hurdle. We found a lot of people wanting to take it, but they wouldn't fit the criteria. So it's not really one issue where you can say this is the problem. But I guess the takeaway here for the purpose of today is that as we think of new products coming into the market, and many players are doing that, KFW is doing that, GIZ is doing that, I know USAID is in the process, who else? I don't know about the World Bank, I haven't heard. No, the EU is what IFC is doing something, but it's not really onto the microfinance. But anyway, the bottom line of it is my message to everybody who's thinking along the lines of let's figure out what a good financing product would be at this time and age and at this current environment. I think they need to really look into customizing the offer to sub-industries. Each industry is driven by a different objective and different growth interests. So I would suggest that any future products would be very customized. It would also take the risking and de-risking issue into a sharper focus of the equation. This is a very important thing. I touch again on the issue of the tourism sector. The tourism sector is a very sensitive sector to any activities, economic, security, anything. And they get hit hard. So I know off the record that many of the banks that we work with would say, unwritten policy, we cannot lend money to hotels. Period, end of story. I mean, they can go through the process of validation of the project and review feasibility studies, but the decision is made before even going to the risk committee. So you really have to combat that. You have to come back with another product that is not a typical bank finance to offer it to that particular sector. And you have to figure it out, you know. And anyway, that's one example. So I don't think it's one issue that we can hang our coat on it and say this is the reason why money is not being absorbed. Money will be absorbed if you start slicing it to the taste of the borrower. What is the idea of having two microphones, by the way? Has nothing to do with diving?
It's blended microphones. Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed. I think you raised, for me, a very important point for the blended finance. Because if we have different, actually, different players, as you mentioned, and each player has his own requirements, so blended finance can become actually also complicated. So this is an important issue in the equation. Thank you very much. Ms. Hanaa, my question to you now is how can blended finance help SME players like the MFIs and the NGOs and associations to provide more outreach and access finance to their beneficiaries?
Thank you very much, Rasha. Actually, when we say blended finance, I would like to mention angel investors, venture capital, and blended finance should really focus on startups to start with. They don't have the means, they don't have the capabilities, they don't have the know-how, and they need all the help they can get. So venture capital startups are really important. I'd like also to mention that one of the obstacles needed is to promote entrepreneurship awareness. In this country, youngsters shy off from starting their businesses. So what can we do in this regards? A few things. First of all, demonstrate success stories to encourage those youngsters to start their business. And as I mentioned, ILO has a very good project in this regards. Second, I think with blended finance, we can transform the informal sector to formal sector. And I thank ENCC for the policy advocacy that has taken place to apply a flat rate when it comes to taxation, because this is a very good tool to transform the informal into formal. I mean, they'd rather stay informal because they're not paying taxes, they're not paying insurance, and so on and so forth. But with the taxation, the flat rate applied, this can be an excellent incentive. Also the training process, I mean, they get benefits in training, capacity building, taxation, marketing, exhibitions, and so on and so forth. Second, also I'd like to mention the industrial clusters, how SMEs, and I think the blended finance would also cater to that. How can industrial clusters help as feeding industries when it comes to SMEs? So SMEs can be established in industrial clusters to act as feeding industries to the larger ones. So I think this is also a very important aspect when it comes to blended finance. So if we can blend angel investors, venture capital, banks, donors, and so on and so forth, I think this would be a very successful model when it comes to encouraging and developing further this very important sector. Entrepreneurship is very important. How can we spread it? First of all, and I think Dr. Hussein would like that, would love that, through in the syllabus when it comes to schools, when it comes to universities. I think we can spread entrepreneurship from the start. Media should play a very important role as well. I'm not talking here about blended finance, but I'm talking rather on how can we enhance entrepreneurship, and this is a very important tool to further develop SMEs in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanaa. And actually, we actually did that for the technical schools. We have a project with the Ministry of Education, Technical Education. USAID, and yes. And we introduced actually entrepreneurship and innovation as a curriculum, and we are establishing some fabrication labs in some of the, yes. So we're already implementing your suggestion. Mr. Ahmed, you talked about your projects in the conservation of coral reefs and so on, and I think some of these projects would need some kind of high level of finance. So do you think that the concept of blended finance would be useful in the context of your projects, or the context of the conservation of coral reefs in general and the green economy? Thank you.
So of course, I mean, like you can have, I mean, like you can expand. I mean, like finance is needed in such a project. You know, like we need to expand the project. I mean, like to be, because right now I'm limited in one area first. I mean, like because this is still like under experiment. I mean, like to try this. I mean, like plus once we talk about corals, so we have to talk about with institutional thinking, you know, like people, you know, like, so these people, I mean, like they need to see results first, I mean, like before they think to expand the project. Egypt has like big areas, it has different climates. I mean, like a lot of corals are more dominant on the other corals as well, so we have to study all of that. So we cannot study in one area, because if we start talking about corals, then we talk about protocols and ethics as well. You know, like for example, we take the genes from an area. This area, we work only for five kilometers. So that means we have to do the reef rehabilitation from the gene that we propagated in one nursery within only 5 kilometers. We cannot go further because, again, it's different climate, different weather, so we cannot stick to one area first. You know, I'm quite sure, like Egypt is quite long though, you know, like over 1,000 kilometers, you know, from Gulf of Suez, you know, up to the south to Halaib and Shalatin, you know. So I believe like we definitely need like more finance to expand the project to be all over the area. Plus we need to go for the other part, Sinai, you know, like Sharm el-Sheikh and the other part. Plus we are thinking of doing it in the Mediterranean as well, in places that can have the gene as well, you know. So for sure that can be, this is very helpful here. Thank you.
Okay, so so Dr. Ashraf, the question now for you. Are there any challenges facing the implementation of blended finance in the IT sector, the ICT sector?
Before I answer this question, I had also something for Ahmed and Saif. It's quite interesting. The project is quite interesting, and something maybe we should think of is how to make it profitable in a way that make it pay back for the loans or for the financing institutions, because it has a very strong sustainability goal for Egypt. and it reflects on different domains. So I think this is something maybe that needs more elaboration. For ICT, what are the challenges? Okay, so if we talk about the ICT guys, about ICT SMEs and the startups, entrepreneurs, they are the same like any other. They face the same problems, and the issue for startups is the rate of failure, because usually you have 10% survive from every 10 companies or startups, one only maybe the survival. So selecting the right startup to fund and to put your money on is not easy thing to do. So the selection process itself is not easy. It needs expertise, and it needs to have all the stakeholders aligned, because in this kind of applications, it is not only about developing an application. It's more about having all stakeholders around this application. For example, in agriculture, you have to have the Ministry of Agriculture here in Egypt somehow involved. Somehow we have access to certain data to make a certain application working properly and benefiting the farmer, for example, or to implement supply chain and so on. So you have to have all the stakeholders aligned. So this is one thing that is important. Selection, transparency of the implementation, because you fund a startup, you fund an SME, but you need to make sure that these funds are dispersed in the right way and returning the right returns or the expected returns afterwards. Of course, this also will give you also somehow a tool to, how we say it, it's more of avoiding defaults. If you see or perceive a defaulting situations that may occur, then you can tell the institution or the company what they should do about it. So I think these are the main challenges. Of course, we talked about access to finance before. It's still a challenge, and of course the issues that my colleagues have mentioned about the capacity building and the need of the expertise of the startup itself and the team and all this kind of stuff is also a challenge in the selection process. So I think these are in brief most of the challenges in the ICT sector.
Okay, so just as a last goal, just in one sentence for each panelist, if you can just give me one recommendation to improve the implementation or to make sure the implementation of blended finance in Egypt will be successful, and how to actually maximize the benefits from the introduction of this model. Just one sentence for each. So if you can just move back the microphone from each other.
تجارتي فمش صعبة دي. In one sentence, customization is very important. Longevity, I think it needs a perseverance from the donor side. I have seen donors coming in and do a great job for 3, 4, 5 years, and by the time the market picks up, they're not there. So that's very important. Consistency and customization.
Startups, startups, startups. Give them the appropriate support through blended financing, be it with angel investors, banks, NGOs, and so on and so forth. So they need a shoulder to cry on. They don't have help. Digitization, e-payments and e-collection for SMEs. Capacity building, I'm just going to say it in bullets. Capacity building, marketing, licensing are very important to boost this very important sector. Informality to be transformed to formal sector, and venture labs, and we have very excellent examples of like Flat 6 Labs, the AEC Venture Lab in business incubators and accelerators. So again, startups, 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 they need the support. Thank you.
Yeah, I will just repeat again. I mean, like with just one startup, you know. So like startup is startup. I mean, like I think this is the future of this country. I think you need to focus more on the startups. Thank you.
Type. I think focus is the important thing. Select the highly attractive domain or couple of domains and focus on specific areas, applications on these domains, and apply all the right measures to make sure that it works. Customization, use of technology is an important thing, and build the case of success. Then you can easily replicate it for other donors and other domains.
Thank you very much for the panelists. It was very, very engaging and interesting panel discussion. Thank you very much. Okay. طيب خلاص. Any questions from the floor?
Can I hear from each one of you what is the real, your own perception of the translation in Arabic of the word blended financing? Yes. شكرا. مختلط. Is it مختلط؟ احنا في education when you say blended education we mean distant education with the face-to-face education. This is blending two types of education together. But in blended finance انا عمال اسال من ساعه ما قعدت بالعربي اقول ايه؟ definitely مش مختلط. ها؟ blended من البلندر يعني. اوكي. اوكي. حاجه بقى خاصه بالانتربرينورز والكلام اللي احنا نقوله لاطفالنا وشبابنا في المدارس والجامعات. انا بشوف كتير من الخريجين عندهم افكار ما يعرفوش اساسا الطريق الى الفاينانسنج. او السيلبس في المدارس from the start. ولا بروجكتس للطلبه يعرفوا يعملوا منها.
بنعمل كده through entrepreneurship.
اوكي.
study بافكار مشروعات بدراسات جدوى منمقه.
ثانك يو. ليا سؤال لك. انت you said انك انت جاي من military background. Where did you get your perfect English and where was your education? No, you have very good English, huh?
Well, I think, I have many scholarships, like in the U.S., first. So I finished my combat diver training in the U.S. Army. So my basic training was in Fulbright, first in North Carolina, and then the following training was in U.S. training.
امتى كنت في الجيش؟
من أول ما اتخرجت since 1994, and I retired from the Army in 2015.
وسابوك ازاي يا ابني؟ كانوا المفروض يمسكوا فيك بايديهم.
I have another special force corps from Spain as well. So I was 1 year in Spain as well.
يعني is this available for all military young people?
If you get the opportunity, once you apply for it, you be true.
Lovely, thank you. I'm impressed. اتفضلي.
I'm a big fan.
ربنا يخليك. عيني ناحية بقى. فين الوضع؟
حوار الوضع.
والدي كان جمال جبر الله يرحمه كان رئيس الإدارة المركزية في مستشفيات جامعة القاهرة وماي اكس حماية كان دكتور علاء بكري. طبعا حبيبي.
أصل أنا بواجه حاجة لما مثلا مسافر وأخش الماركت في الأقصر أسوان. يعني I'm a physician, I'm a professor, I'm a politician, and بس الناس لما تقابلني تقول لي ايه؟ النادي الأهلي. They don't know anything of my career but النادي الأهلي.
Blended يا دكتور.
In fact,
An example of blending.
دكتور حسام، انا عايز بس راي حضرتك في حاجه.
لا مش عايز تاخد منه.
يعني كنت عايز اخد راي في حاجه. انا من حوالي اسبوع كده كنت قاعد مع 2 ولد وبنت 15 سنه ونص شاطرين في مدرسه، مش قادرين يفهموا ايه علاقه اللي بيدرسوه في المدرسه بالحياه اللي هيشتغلوا فيها بعد كده. لو كنت حضرتك رجعت 30 40 سنه ايامنا احنا، كان تخش في المدرسه هتطلع ايه يا ابني، يا مهندس يا دكتور يا محامي، عارف السكه يعني. فبيشرحوا لهم الاول. الاطفال دلوقتي ما هماش قادرين يدروا لينكج ما بين الحياه اللي هم شايفينها دلوقتي، ابلكيشنز، رونالدو، ميسي، هم بيشوفوا نماذج عمليه في الحياه لا علاقه لها باللي بيدرسوه من الصبح للساعه 2. ايه اللي ممكن نعمله عشان نربط الفكر المستقبلي بتاع العيال دول باللي بيشوفوه دلوقتي؟ ده سؤال لحضرتك.
ده مش حاجة. هم they reach their goals themselves. لو احنا تدخلنا مش هنعرف نقول لهم يعملوا ايه. هو actually انا بشوف طلبة في اعدادي وثانوي املهم انهم يبقوا professional footballers. ايام ما انا كنت في المدرسة وقلت كده لابويا كان مثلا حبسني. هم الجيل ده ready to know in spite of مدرسينهم واهاليهم. ف just open the space for them to live and react. وهم already on the internet already شغالين على التيك توك ولما بتتزنق انت في الكمبيوتر بتاعك بتروح تجيب حفيدك او ابنك. فهم the best thing is to leave it to them. الويف ماشيه. هي الفكره بقى ايه؟ كلامك بقى صح. how to input some values for them while using the technology. plus ان هم they should know ان هو هيغير الكارير بتاعه من 4 to 5 times in his life. So he should be able to be flexible, adaptable, وبيغير من غير كسوف. ان هو بيتغير. وما عادتش كليات القمه بتاعتنا هي كليات القمه. يعني قصه الطب والهندسه دي is not anymore the way of the young kids. ولان هم كان they make more money عما احنا كنا بنعمل لما بنتخرج. بس هي الفكره ان هم يبقوا capable ويبقوا عندهم language وعندهم skills of communication skills they know how to adapt to the future. Actually العائق امام ولادنا هم مدرسينهم واهاليهم. احنا بقى شغلتنا ايه؟ some values. وانا عملت discussions مع الاطفال في المدارس وفي الجامعه حوالين الفاليوز. I was so surprised بان الاطفال والشباب عندنا حاجه عظيمه جدا وبيقولوا كلام محترم جدا بس احنا ما بنسمعهمش. اتخانقوا معايا على الفاليو بتاعه الطاعه. احنا اهالينا كانوا يقول لك ما تنفعش تقول لابوك لا او ما تنفعش تقول لامك لا different value. الكومن فاليوز بقى اللي احنا متعودين عليها واخدينها ابسو فاكت. احنا اساسا according لكلام الاطفال ده معايا احنا السبب في انهيار الفاليوز عندهم. يعني انت لو عملت ستاتستيك كده سيرفي في مصر ايه اكتر حاجه فاليو في مصر انترابتد؟ الصدق. مجتمع كذاب والكل بيكذب والكل مش زعلان واخترعنا لها الكذبه البيضاء وحاجات دي. فاحنا يعني مش عايز اخرج من الموضوع بس the best thing is to leave them alone.
خلاص. Any more questions?